USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at usaa.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and Auto Camp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
Hello and welcome to the Assassin's Creed Lorecast. We are so excited to bring you this show.
Our podcast is all about unraveling all of your favorite mysteries from the Assassin's Creed games. Each episode will be talking about a different topic in the Assassin's Creed universe. From Pieces of Eden, solar flares, and the Isu, to the Hidden Ones, the Order of Ancients, and of course, the Animus. We will seek to uncover it all.
So join us and maybe even take a leap of faith.
Hello and welcome to the Assassin's Creed Lorecast. My name is Shelby. You also probably know me as She-Cup, and I am here for another episode of the Assassin's Creed Lorecast with my co-host.
Yeah, I'm Austin, also known as Teacup, and I'm here and excited.
You're here. That's about it. Nothing in your brain.
Nope.
Cool. So we are here for another Everything You Need to Know About Fill in the Blank episode. And we've done a lot of revisiting thus far. We've talked about the Animus. We've talked about the Diglok. We've talked about Desmond, which has been a long time coming. But today we are going into the topic that starts it all, which is the Assassins.
Mm-hmm. So we're not going to be talking about the history of the Assassins. So I'm not going to go into like how they're founded or other like proto groups that they have. We do that in our first Assassins episode, and we don't need to rehash this. What we didn't necessarily do in this episode, and what I'm excited to revisit, one of the other reasons and inspirations for this revisit is that Shelby has now played more of the games for these episodes. So she has more knowledge and more thoughts that can happen with a lot of these games. And I'm curious, after playing a lot of basically the whole Desmond saga, Black Flag, and Odyssey and Valhalla, since really we did this, the thoughts that she's going to have about this, because a lot of this is going to be pulling from Origins and the Ezio trilogy and the Desmond saga in general. So this is going to be a lot more about ideology and structure of the Assassin Brotherhood. So that's how we're going to get in there. All right. So I said we weren't going to talk about their origins, but we are. So as we know, Bayek of Siwa and Aya of Alexandria founded the Hidden Ones in order to fight against the Order of Ancients, who sought to control the world through the use of pieces of Eden, political power, and other Isu technology. So that's how they start. They start because, Bayek and Aya, if you've played Origins, they find out about this Order of Ancients. They're working in the shadows behind rulers and all this. And Bayek and Aya are like, someone has to stand against them. It's going to be us. We'll get friends. We'll get people. We'll be the Hidden Ones. So that's how they begin. Great game. If you haven't played Origins, it is the best story of the RPG trilogy. I think Odyssey has the best gameplay, but Origins takes story by no contest.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, it is really, truly no comparison. And I think a big part of that is because it is the most focused on the assassins. I mean, it is called Assassin's Creed for a reason. We want to know about the assassins, and Origins is the one that does this the most explicitly, I think.
Yes, because it is the origin. So, in an ideological thing, like in their creation, the assassins have been about protecting humanity against the forces of injustice, abuses of power, state terror, and enslavement. And like this goes back to where the assassins historically trace their origins, which is with Adam and Eve, and their rebellion against the Isu, which is all about human freedom. We see this coming through. But I think it's interesting in a little bit, they advance a little bit in some of this philosophy that I want to talk about. Bayek is a magi of Egypt. And this is important because they're protectors of the pharaoh. Bayek has this own philosophy he makes of the magi and his own interpretation of the magi that bleeds over into the Hidden Ones. So in a little bit of this history, the Magi were officially the protectors of the Pharaoh. They're the bodyguards of the Pharaoh and the Pharaohs. However, Bayek saw this charge as beyond that, as this duty extending to the protection of the Egyptian people, particularly the downtrodden. So Bayek, from the beginning, in his character, and you see this throughout the game, he is concerned about ensuring that those who do not have influence, those who do not have power, those who do not have voice are protected by him and the Order of Magi. But there's also this idea that he states it's not only the Magi's duty and his duty to protect them from physical danger, but also to ensure, quote, the advancement of their well-being, which I think is something entirely different altogether than just physical protection. This comes up across the games. This idea of we're not just protecting people physically, we're ensuring their freedom. We're ensuring these, the well-being of all of this. And there's two quotes that I want to bring into this. One is from Altair, and one is a conversation that happens between Connor Kenway and Charles Lee. So the quote from Altair is lamenting about the state of the world. And he goes, "What can be done to stop this, to encourage tolerance and equality? Some days we speak of education, believing that knowledge will free us from immorality. But as I walk the streets and see slaves sent off to auction, my heart grows cold. When I see the husband hurl abuses and stones at his wife, insisting she exists only to serve him, my fist clench. And when I see children torn from their parents so another man might profit, set off to suffer beneath the desert sun and die. On these days, I do not think of dialogue that will make a difference. On these days, I think only of how the perpetrators need to die." And I think this really not only sums up Altair's character, which we've done a deep dive on Altair, this kind of more sums up his belief in the assassin, in that we can talk about change, we can talk about this, but we have, at some point, we have a duty to remove that which is preventing the well-being of people. And then another sense of duty comes in. Charles Lee at the end of Assassin's Creed 2 is in his deathbed. He is lamenting to Connor. He says, "Why do you persist? You put us down, we rise again. You end one plot, we forge another. You try so hard, but it always ends the same. Those who know you think you mad, and this is why. Even the men you sought to save have turned their backs on you. Yet you fight, you resist. Why? Connor, because no one else will." And again, it's this ideology that comes forth of like, it is our duty. We are the ones who are going to stand in the way. And we're going to continue to do that. That is at the core of the foundation of the Assassin's Brotherhood and keeps into the current iterations, even in the modern day.
Yeah, and I think this really goes back to their origin, and not necessarily with Bayek and Aya, but further back than that with the Isu, because humanity itself are created to be slaves, and we get free because people rebel, and as Altair says, kill the perpetrators. And so it's kind of almost like baked into humanity's DNA to resist, to rebel. And I'm not talking about like us, humanity. I'm talking about humanity in the Assassin's Creed universe is to rebel against evil, because that's what they've been doing since humans were created and freed from the Isu. And so I think this is a very natural tendency, very natural urge among humanity to want to persist and want to fight back against tyranny. And I think that we see that very much in all of the assassins, all of the people who are drawn to the Order of Assassins that we've seen thus far are because something has happened in their life that has made them go, this is not okay. Something needs to be done about this. And sometimes there are also Templars who have those same experiences with the assassins doing bad things, and they go to the other side. And that's why I think it's so important for the assassins to stick to the creed, to obey the creed, to, not harm the innocent, to look out for the little guy, to live up to what they say they are, because otherwise your people that you may be able to recruit are gonna turn over to the Templars. Because what's the point? If the guys that are supposed to be good are actually bad, what's the point of any of it all?
Which I think gets into the I think the creed is vastly misunderstood, both by people in the game and even by us in the fandom when we're reading it and looking at it. And I've got a lot of quotes that we'll talk about later from different assassins talking about this. But I love this quote from Altair. It is one of my favorite of his, just because I think it's really easy to empathize with, especially unless you are just like either completely numb to the world or, hopefully not completely evil. You can empathize with this being so angry that you want to just do something. And that something is to remove that which is causing harm.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. And I think it very much, I think that there is an urge in American society specifically to think, or maybe even to want to believe, that if we just sit down and talk about our lives with one another, like everything will work out and be fine. And if we just have dialogue, like Altair says, then we can solve all the problems in the world. And I used to think that when I was younger, but I think the longer you live on the earth, seeing the things that go on around you, whether it's political, whether it's just societal, whether it's with your employer, whatever, the more of the world you see, the more you realize that the world's problems are not going to be solved if we just sit down and talk about them. The world's problems are not going to be fixed if we just like see more commonalities with each other. Not that that is bad. I don't want anybody listening to think, oh, well, I can be an asshole to my neighbor and it's totally fine. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, societal systemic change is not going to be defeated or is not going to occur if, like, politicians just sit down with each other and, like, have conversations. Like, that's not going to happen. But go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'm reminded of two things with this, which is the like famous quote that people love to say, like, evil only wins when good people do nothing. I'm paraphrasing that. There's a different like thing of that, but that's that quote. But it also reminds me of when we were in graduate school and we would go to the leadership of that said school and complain about things, and they would say, oh, well, there's conversations happening about that. And that was always the response, to where we were finally like, well, what is being said? Like, conversations are happening, but nothing is happening.
Conversations are being had, but results are not occurring. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the same is true, for Assassin's Creed, in that, we see them fighting all the time. But what in the world of Assassin's Creed has actually changed over the years, other than the Templars amassing more power?
What reminds me of is like the point of, I don't love the Christopher Nolan Batman movies as interpretations of Batman, but I know you hate Batman, but just sit with me. But one of the best scenes in that is one of the memes, is a memeable moment that gets played out in memes, but this conversation that Bruce Wayne and Alfred have about the Joker. And Batman so wants to rehabilitate the Joker. Bruce Wayne wants to find the good and find the motivation and why the Joker is doing what he's doing. And Alfred tells him this story about Vietnam and about in the jungle. And the final thing that Alfred says, it goes, some men just want to watch the world burn. Yeah. And I think the Assassins have an understanding that those people exist. At their core, Altair knows that those people exist. And to ensure that the world doesn't burn down, you have to remove those who are trying to burn it down. All right. Any last thoughts about this, like, opening kind of origin philosophy, stuff like that?
No, I'm ready to get into the creed.
Yeah, so the creed itself is really I said several parts, but it's really in two parts. There are two maxims that exist in the creed that the creed opens with, which is nothing is true and everything is permitted. And then there's three central tenets of the Assassin's Creed, which is stick to the shadows, stay your blade from the flesh of the innocents, never compromise the Brotherhood. Now, I want to take some time. These things are often misunderstood. They're misunderstood in universe. They're misunderstood sometimes in discussion. But luckily, we have some points to talk about this and a lot of quotes. I'm going to be saying a lot of quotes in this. But I think it's the best way to understand this is to take it from those who live it and study it, which are the assassins that we meet in game. So the first one is nothing is true, everything is permitted. Now, a lot of times in the game, they talk to this as what fancy philosophical word is a moral nihilism. Now, nihilism is the idea of like nothing is like real, nothing is important, like this sense of nothingness is what nihilism kind of centralizes. And so moral nihilism is like there is no overarching morality to anything. And that's what the assassins get accused of. But that's not really true if we look at their actions. There is a clear-cut and emphasized system of morality for the assassins. Like, they don't just go around and say, oh, do whatever you want. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They say, no, you don't get to do whatever you want. Ezio has a great quote that's like, wanting something is not a good enough reason to have it. And there's just, and one of the things that I was taking when I was doing the research for this is just how much wisdom exists in these elder assassins, especially like Ezio and Altair towards the end of their time, and like how much wisdom and life experience they have to pass on and their understanding of this particular point of the creed. So So I want to bring some quotes and offer really discussion. One is from Malik Asseaf, who is one of the characters in Origins. He is the one who loses his arm in the Temple of Solomon, and he is the liaison in Jerusalem. And so, and he and Altair have it back and forth. But one time on his first assignment in Jerusalem, Altair comes to him and he's like, "Oh, I know all of this." And Malik says to him, he goes, "You cannot know anything, only suspect. You must expect to be wrong, to have overlooked something." And I think this is something at the core of Nothing is True, is the idea that the things you are presented can't be taken at face value all the time. And I think that's a place where a lot of assassins get into things. A lot of young assassins, I'm thinking of young Ezio, of Arno Dorian, of Connor, even when he is young, they act on information without thinking that they could be wrong in the situation. Mm-hmm. And that leads to some of their biggest mistakes or their betrayals or doing that. I think that's a core of the idea.
Yeah, and I think it comes into assumption, right? Like we assume, or they assume that, oh, I've got this information, it must be good because it came from somebody I trusted, or because it makes sense to me on the surface, we're just going to assume and we're going to go with it. You know, like in our world, we have the saying, if you assume, you're going to become the first three letters of that word, an ass. Right. And I think it's the very same point, is like, you can't just assume that this information that you have is true just because you want it to be true. That's not what makes a smart or a good assassin. A good assassin is going to look at the situation from every possible angle, from every point of view. They, like Malik is saying, they are going to expect to be wrong. They're going to expect that they've overlooked a crucial piece of information because there's no way you can know every single thing.
Right. And this really comes up into Altair's understanding and what he talks about, because he has a quote too, to say, to recognize nothing is true and everything permitted is to recognize that the laws arise not from divine ordainment or divinity, but from reason. I understand now that our creed does not command us to be free, it commands us to be wise. And like a lot of times in different philosophies, this kind of paradox is emphasized, like especially in like Christian tradition, like the idea of like it is through obedience and obedience to God and what God wants in your life that you find freedom. It's a similar kind of paradox that's existing here. This wisdom leads Altair to freedom, but it's not just a freedom of, or the fancy philosophical word is hedonism, which is the idea that you could do whatever you want and your consequences don't matter. That's not what everything permitted is doing. It's recognizing that everything is permitted because the laws that are governed by country are created by reason and men, meaning that if those are failing, we have a duty to act in contrary. Kind of like MLK talks about, an unjust law is no law at all.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said for you as an assassin in the Assassin's Creed universe. There's a responsibility associated with everything is permitted. Like if you see an injustice occurring against the flesh of the innocent, you have a responsibility to protect them. And if that means breaking the law, well, everything's permitted and you have that responsibility. And so I do think that there is this notion of duty and obligation, and even like being for the assassins, like you have an obligation to make the hard choice. You have a responsibility to do the things that nobody else wants to do. That's what it means by everything is permitted. Not just that you get to do whatever you want all the time. And if you want to be lazy on the couch and watch TV instead of going where William Miles tells you to go, you can do that because everything's permitted. That's not what it means. It means you have a responsibility to be more, to be better.
Right. And like, it's also like, but in that is a freedom. And Eivor actually has a quote about this that I think is fascinating about this. And Eivor doesn't, come up a lot in when our discussions about assassins, because Eivor is not an assassin.
Mm-hmm.
But Eivor says, I will not be captive to another man's gaudy design. My destiny is mine to weave. And I think this is an understanding of everything is permitted, in a sense of like, it's not that Eivor is shirking her responsibility to anything going on, or shirking her responsibility to her clan, or to protecting her people, or to doing anything. She is acknowledging that I get to decide. I have the freedom to decide and do this. And what is essential to me will always be essential, regardless of what the design of another man or humans design is for that. What is right and what is good and what I decide will always be the destiny I can choose.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ezio and Edward sum this up in the best way I think possible. Ezio says it at the end of Assassin's Creed Revelation. He says, to say that nothing is true is to realize that the foundations of society are fragile and that we must be the shepherds of our civilization. To say everything is permitted is to understand that we are the architects of our actions and that we must live with their consequences, whether glorious or tragic. And then Edward says it might be this idea is only the beginning of wisdom and not its final form.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of truth in, especially Ezio's statement that the foundations of society are fragile. The foundations of our society are fragile. Look at the world around us. Like, watch the news. The world is very fragile. And again, Ezio says we have a responsibility to our civilization. Like, if we want our our descendants to survive, like, we got to do something about it. And, sometimes we make the wrong choice. And when we do, we have to live with those consequences. It's the responsibility that is on your shoulders as an assassin.
It's so interesting and that's what I love about the Ezio trilogy, is that we get to watch Ezio go from this carefree young man who is only focused on revenge to the altruistic, like, old man that he ends up to becoming, about giving back and making sure all of that. And the idea of going from everything is permitted to we're the architects of our actions and we have to live with their consequences. I think there's an understanding and a wisdom, and that's what Edward is talking about. Everything is permitted is the beginning. I think what Ezio is getting at that they have to live with the consequences of what is done. Even though everything is open to us to do, we have to live with those consequences. And so we need to be wise and care about what we do, or that is that idea. There's the final form of wisdom that comes in this.
And I think that only a person like Ezio can get there. Like, you can't just be perfect your whole life. Ezio has run the gamut of the hedonistic young adult, the hedonistic young man only concerned with getting some action, where he turns into an adult and then even an elder who is so concerned with his legacy, is so concerned with what he's going to leave behind, the consequences of his action. And I think that it does take so much wisdom to get there. And I think that if you are an assassin who lives to be old, and we know that most of them don't, but if you are an assassin who lives to be old, I think that this is a natural arc for you to come to. Again, because you've seen so much of the world, so much death, so much injustice.
Well, I think now is a good time for our mid-break. And we'll come back after the mid-break and get into the tenets of the creed.
Okay, well, let's go to the mid-break.
This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there is one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at friskies.com or visit your local store.
Mint is still $15 a month for premium wireless. And if you haven't made the switch yet, here are 15 reasons why you should. 1, it's $15 a month. 2, seriously, it's $15 a month. 3, no big contrast. 4, I use it. 5, my mom uses it. Are you playing me off? That's what's happening, right? Okay, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, $15 per month equivalent required. New customer offer first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Cadillac. Cadillac certified service technicians are factory trained to fit your vehicle with the tires specifically developed for it. And with our tire price match guarantee, you get the best fit for the best deal. Let us do the work. Available on select eligible tire brands at participating dealers only. Offer ends 12/31/2025. Terms apply. See dealer for complete details. Visit Cadillac.com/service to learn more.
Ma cos'è? Shoot! Shoot a flying demon!
I'm sure you can put this to better use than I can.
Oh, what's this, Greenie? Assassin Christmas.
I needs to be oiled before I goes to the games.
Well, I would have been happy to assist if you were in any state to compete.
I likes to be oiled.
Well, that's obvious.
All right. So the first thing I have to tell you about in the middle of the show is our Patreon. It is the best way to support us. If you love what we do on the show and want to say thank you, Patreon is the best way to do it. And you get a lot of benefits too. And if you join the Patreon, we will read your name out on the next episode we record after you join. And at certain tiers, we'll even read your name out every episode and you can come on the show. And so I do have Voss. His name gets read out on every single episode because he is a mentor tier assassin. And if you can't support us on Patreon, the next best way to support us is to leave us a rating, a review, some kind words on Spotify comments, wherever you can leave us something. We monitor those and we will read them out on the show. And so one that I have to read today comes from Dakota, who commented on Spotify on the Seek Empire episode and said, "Just gotta say, love your podcast. You guys inspired me to get back into AC again. I finally completed Odyssey and replayed Origins and played the DLC for both games for the first time. 10 out of 10 pod. Thank you so much for that awesome review. We really appreciate it. And then the next thing I have to tell you about is our Discord server, which we do have one of those. It is the best place on the internet, in my opinion. We have a lot of fun. We talk about all the new games. We lament the state of the games industry and just generally support each other and have a good time. So come hang out with us over there. And then lastly, as we announced last week, we do have a merch shop now. You can find it on our website at cupspodcasting.com or in this episode description. And we've got all kinds of awesome designs, awesome t-shirts and hats and stickers and all kinds of stuff. So if you want, speaking of the Creed, if you want a hoodie or a sweatshirt with "Nothing is true, everything is permitted" on it, you can get one of those from our merch shop. So definitely go check it out. We've got some awesome stuff over there. And so I think that's all I have to talk about in the middle of the show. So let's get back into the content.
Jif peanut butter. It's that jiffing good. It doesn't really need advertising. So instead, enjoy the calming sounds of the ocean. Jif. Ooh, it's that jiffing good. Get your Jif at jif.com.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso Virtuo coffee machines. Ready to enjoy the bold flavors of barista quality Nespresso iced coffee at home? simply fill a glass with ice and press the brew button on your virtual pop machine to enjoy rich double espressos roasted to stand up even when chilled. Refreshingly bold iced coffee. Refreshingly easy to make at home. Visit Nespresso.com to shop now.
Who says you can't be the topic of conversation for all the right reasons? The Hyundai Tucson Hybrid pairs bold presence with advanced technology and sleek style. It's everything you didn't know you needed in an SUV and then some. Okay, Hyundai. Visit HyundaiUSA.com to learn more.
Malaka. A party? I wasn't invited. Neither were the horses. I'm sure she just misplaced my invitation. Stuck. See if you can find something to pry it open. Honor? What are you up to? Oh, no. Don't do that. There's no way of knowing what's on the other side.
All right. So we're getting into the actual tenets of the creed, which is what we know of. So the first one is stick to the shadows. Now, contrary to popular belief within the fandom, this does not mean that assassins have to operate in stealth. In fact, in the Levantine Brotherhood, it is the idea that they emphasize public killings have their place in their movement, and that killing someone very publicly and on display can serve the purpose of sending the message to the people to rise up, to inspire them to come at that. So there is this idea of the stick to the shadows is more about hiding the Brotherhood itself rather than operating in stealth in all of that. But it also recognizes that the assassins themselves are not to claim glory. They are not supposed to be the ones who exceed this glory in the world and amass power. They work to the shadows to ensure the well-being and safety of humanity, which goes back into the early philosophies with Bayek and Aya that we were talking about. And so Bayek and Aya do remark that the hidden ones or the assassins must stick to the shadows because the order of ancients is already operating in the shadow of the powerful. It's already operating behind the scenes of the shadows of rulers. So to oppose them, the hidden ones and the assassins must operate in the shadow of the people. Do you have any thoughts about that? I found that interesting in that's not really what we think about when we think of stick to the shadows.
Yeah, I do think it makes the criticism of the RPG games interesting that, we don't have to stick to the stealth. They're not stealthy games, which people love to claim all the time. And I do think that there is part of that is fair. But just because you're an assassin doesn't mean you have to literally be in a shadow 100% of the time. But it does mean that, you don't need to crave glory, like you've said. And I think to me, that's the interesting part of it all, because it's such a distinct difference from the Templars, because the Templars are quite literally the definition of gain as much power as we possibly can, be as famous as we can, get as much money as we can so that we can destroy the world and, do all the things that they want to do. So it's just an interesting to me that it's the philosophical opposite of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. And it's the idea of and we see that philosophical tension in the conversation I read earlier between Charles Lee and Connor, in that Lee cannot even imagine a world of why Connor does this because he gains nothing. But Connor's I do this because no one else will, and it's what's right.
Right, a Templar cannot understand or imagine altruism. The assassin is defined. The assassin is defined by altruism. That's the difference between the two of them. And that's, we're going to get into Stay Your Blade, which goes along with that. But I think so to stick to the shadows.
So yes. So let's, as you just said, that good segue. Stay your blade from the flesh of the innocent. While I believe, in my own opinion, as this is the central and most important aspect of the creed. This is the thing that is at the heart of what must be done, is that the assassins are not just merciless killers who are indiscriminate in who they kill. You are not to harm the people who are innocent. But while it's in central, it is not in the initial creed that Bayek and Aya create. It is added later. And so it's added and founded after an individual in one of the DLCs for Origins in the realm of Sinai puts innocent people in harm's way to take down an order member. He causes a rebellion and puts them in harm's way to do this. It is in this that Bayek and Aya add to the creed, stating that the Hidden Ones should never harm the ones they are trying to protect. Now, there is some things about, like, you're not responsible for what Templars do to people, but you should not be trying to harm people in there. And this is like one of the biggest sins of Altair in the early first game, is he kills this old man beneath Solomon's temple who was just in the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the hugest offense that he did. And yes, he revealed himself when he wasn't supposed to. He led to attack on Masyaf, but he kills this old man who had nothing to do it, who was just visiting Solomon's temple. But like, this also extends to a point of, like, don't kill the people who are unknowingly working for the Templars.
Yeah, which, I mean, especially in the modern era, there are so many people who are unknowingly working for the Templars. Like, you cannot tell me that every single person who works at Abstergo understands and knows what is, like, the original founding of the organization. Like, no, there's probably tons and tons of just, like, regular white collar workers who don't know the history of this organization. But I think most modern day assassins, if one of those people got in their way, they would not hesitate to kill them.
No. It's very, I mean, and, you know, so there's the whole scene with Charlotte de la Cruz where she bounds up the Abstergo employee who has an asthma attack and dies. And Charlotte is very beat up about it and, like, can't get over it. But, you know, as much as we love her, Xavier and Galena and Kiyoshi and Cody Adams, they're like, well, you know, it happens.
Yeah. And that is a place where the modern day assassins are very much failing to live up to this, I think. And at the same time, it's also, you know, it's a little bit more complicated, because when this was first instituted, like, the Templars were not this overwhelming corporate, sprawling, bureaucratic organization. That is a later invention. And so it definitely blurs the line between Templars and associates or friendlies. So it is a little bit of a gray area, but I think the modern day assassins have become so focused on eradicating the Templars that they have forgotten these most important tenets of the creed.
And I think that shows when you become and you live in this mindset of scarcity, which is what the assassins are living in right now, you tend to lose the broader picture focus. You're focused on what's in front of you, which I think could sum up William Miles as a character pretty well, is scarcity and the loss of the broader picture.
I would rather not talk about him again.
Okay. So our last tenet, which I really think is so, all these tenets are interrelated to each other. They do not exist without, like, a connection to the other ones. But this one is really connected to the first two, which is never compromise the Brotherhood. And, like, on its surface, you could read this of, like, oh, don't reveal our secrets, don't reveal our members, don't reveal where our hideouts are, anything like that. But it goes so much beyond just that, just not betraying the Brotherhood, because it's also a huge emphasis on keeping the other two tenets, which don't compromise the Brotherhood. The first one, don't compromise the Brotherhood by harming the innocent and losing trust of the people we're supposed to protect. Ezio has a great quote when he comes into Rome and he and Machiavelli are talking about how they're gonna take Rome back from the Borgia, and Machiavelli's like, oh, well, we could, sneak into this place and do this place. And Ezio's like, no. Killing, and he's like, you should have killed Rodrigo when you had the chance. And Ezio's like, no, killing Rodrigo would have done nothing, because look at the power and infrastructure that the Borgia hold. We need to take that power away. And Machiavelli is like, you surely not talking about appealing to the people. And Ezio's like, why not? And he goes, Machiavelli says, the people are like sand. You can't trust them or do anything. And Ezio says, quote, I have it here, our belief in people rests at the heart of the Assassin's Brotherhood. Which even that. And so but you can't be harming the innocent, because then those people aren't going to trust you to keep them safe. You have to keep doing that. And it also means never compromising the Brotherhood by not putting your own power before the Brotherhood, not putting your own comfort, not any of that before the purpose and the cause of the Brotherhood. Within the Assassin's Creed is this huge emphasis on self-denial, on denying the ideas and maybe even what you expected of yourself, or what you would expect of and do for yourself, denying that, which I think is why these people who are necessarily born into the Assassin's Brotherhood, like Desmond, have this reaction, because they're never given the choice to come from that. And that's Desmond's whole thing that he talks about with Sean, is that I wish I would have had the choice, because if I had been presented with all the evidence, I would have chosen this. But because I wasn't, because I was born into this and I was never given that choice, I resented it.
Yeah, and I do agree with you completely. And I think the power of this third maxim is that it is so much deeper than compromise or betrayal. It is so much deeper than you can't be treasonous against the assassins, right? It goes back to, you need to do everything to put yourself last and put the order, the institution of the assassins first. And while, yes, we can have criticisms and not everything is perfect, not everything is that easy. Sometimes there are things we have to stand against, but generally, you should not be putting yourself and your wants and your desires and what you want to do before the needs of the people, before the needs of the assassins, before the needs of fighting the Templars. It's not just, oh, don't betray us. It is so much deeper and more important and more complex and more vital than just don't betray us. That is an easy out. And it is, again, so much more complicated than that.
Right. And I think that one of the things about the philosophy that I don't have in the notes that we need to talk about specifically about the creed itself is the creed is never meant to be dogmatic, in that it's never meant to just be this literal interpretation that you follow this and you follow it to the letter and you do all of this. It's supposed to be a discussion. It's supposed to be something. It's why they're not saying in assassin school, they're not saying, oh, everything is permitted and this is what this means. Each assassin has to come to understand what this means and what it looks like in their own terms.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the idea that it's not dogmatic is one that I think is probably difficult for most, at least Americans, to understand, because so much of everything in our culture, our society is dogmatic. You have to do X, Y, and Z to be a good person. You have to do X, Y, and Z to be a good American or to be a good Christian or to whatever the case may be. Fill in the blank with whatever adjective you want to use. But that's not the way the assassins are set up. The assassins are very much set up as, this is almost a you have to figure it out for yourself. You have to decide in this situation what is right and what is wrong. And sometimes it changes based on the situation, based on the context. And going back to Ezio's quote of like, sometimes the consequences for our actions, sometimes they're tragic, sometimes they're glorious. And that's part of the weight of being an assassin.
Right, 100%. And I think that's like the critique is that the Templars poke holes at this philosophy because they take it in a dogmatic way. In a way, they twist it and take the words in a way that they're never meant to be interpreted as. And I think that's part of the weapon is like to convince people of like, oh, well, if everything is permitted, then you can do whatever the heck you want. And there's no matter for consequences. That's actually the opposite of what this maxim is saying. It's kind of like when people use the phrase, well, blood is thicker than water to like make you think that, oh, your family is more important than your friends. When in reality, the maxim or the philosophy means the opposite of what you're trying to make it say. Because it's blood of the covenant is thicker than water of the womb.
Yep. I mean, generally, if somebody is trying to make you think one thing, I want to be asking some questions.
Yes, that is a good philosophy of life to live by. So that's enough philosophy and ideology for the day. Let's talk just general structure and ranking, because there is no clear one, because the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood changes over its 2,000 years of existing. But in general, there are 4 ranks that always exist. There's always the initiate, which you can either be recruited into or born into this rank. So like people like Altair, like Desmond, they are born into the initiate rank. And then you become an assassin, which this is typically when one passes their initiation test and joins the order fully. And this is typically when a member gets their hidden blade, but some have gotten it before this moment. And it's a moment of like, think about Ezio. Ezio does get his hidden blade before this moment, but when he kills Vieri's father, who I cannot remember his name. I think that's when he becomes an assassin he's full in on this. This isn't just about personal vengeance anymore. He's full in on where we are. And then after a while, they become a master assassin, which is like full, I would say, is where you enter into full membership within the Brotherhood of you're operating as an assassin on your own, doing your own stuff, being sent places. And this typically happens after an assassin has completed a huge task, such as Ezio taking down Templars in Assassin's Creed 2, and after he confronts Rodrigo in the vault, or after the events of Mirage, which I won't go into for Shelby, but that's another example. And then the last rank is the mentor rank. This is reserved for assassins who have risen to leadership among either the assassins overall, which we see in the modern day, or over a local cell or Brotherhood. Like we see Ezio is the mentor of the Rome Brotherhood of Assassins. Achilles was mentor of the Colonial Brotherhood of Assassins, like other things like that. Or William Miles is mentor of the entire Assassins Brotherhood. It is unclear how you reach this rank. We only really have 2 examples, which is one where Machiavelli yields the rank of mentor to Ezio in Rome, and the other is that William Miles is the highest ranking assassin left, so he just assumes the role of mentor. So we don't really know, like, is there a body that bestows this title? Is there a process? Are they duly elected? Do they just rise? We don't know. what authority does Machiavelli have to say, oh, Ezio, you can be the mentor? How does that work? I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of unclear. It kind of seems to me that generally there's like a consensus among the people. Whereas like with William, well, there's not many people, so he has to do it because he's the senior most person.
Right. Well,
which explains
I think it's
a lot.
Right. I also think it is with William, it's a natural thing. It's a moment of crisis. He is in a lot of crises, if you have an established chain of command, people are going to fall into that established chain of command because that's what makes them feel safe.
For sure.
So I would say William entering that role is more just the fact that everyone's like, we don't know what the heck is happening. William is in charge of us right now, so he's the mentor.
Yeah.
But that's all I got. Anything else?
I don't think so. I think the assassin's philosophy is very interesting. A subject I could probably talk about for a long time because you're right, so many people misunderstand it. But it's definitely really interesting. And thank you for putting all the lore and all the quotes together. I'm sure that took a long time. But yeah, if you don't have anything else to add, we can kind of wrap it up.
All right, let's wrap it up.
All right. Well, thank you, Austin. And thank you all for listening to the Assassin's Creed Lorecast. We will see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Assassin's Creed Lorecast. You can find us on Twitter at AC Lorecast.
If you have any lore questions or topics to unpack, join our Cups Podcasting and More Discord server. It's the best place on the internet. You can also support us financially through our Patreon. Find us on patreon.com/Assassin's Creed Lorecast. The Assassin's Creed Lorecast is part of the Robots Radio Network. For more information about the Robots Radio Network, join the Discord server via the link in our episode's description.
If you enjoyed the show or learned something new today, please subscribe, leave us a review, and join the Patreon. And if you enjoyed our intro and outro music, make sure you give a big thank you to Pipeman Studios. Thank you, Pipeman. Thanks again for listening to the Assassin's Creed Lorecast. And always remember, Assassins, stay in the shadows to serve the light.
Want to live better? We got a lot of work to do. Join Chris Hemsworth in National Geographic's new Disney Plus original series, Limitless. Live Better Now.
I'm diving headfirst into cutting-edge science to uncover 3 powerful secrets to living better right now. The growth that occurs through any challenging experience is really what we seek.
Chris Hemsworth stars in Limitless. Live Better Now. Now streaming on Disney Plus and Hulu.
It's showtime.
This episode is brought to you by FX's Alien Earth, the official podcast. Each week, host Adam Rogers is joined by guests, including the show's creator, cast, and crew, in this exclusive companion podcast. They will explore story elements, deep dive into character motivations, and offer an episode-by-episode behind-the-scenes breakdown of each terrifying chapter in this new series. Search FX's Alien Earth wherever you listen to podcasts.